Hi, this is Sheila Magers with my presentation on social justice. Nationally, African American students are 3 times as likely as other students to be suspended or expelled for the same infraction, according to the article, What Are Your Expectations? Black students were suspended at only twice the rate in 1972, so the problem is not improving. Black students from middle class and wealthy backgrounds are still punished more frequently and more severely than non-black students. Inequity based on race goes beyond discipline. Black students are often taught by less experienced teachers, more frequently referred for special education, do poorly on standardized tests, and drop out prematurely. Nationally, 40% of students are African American, and 80% of our teachers are white. Research does not support African American students misbehaving more than other children, but racial discrepancies in discipline still exist. There is a strong correlation between academic achievement and discipline problems. Black students score significantly lower on reading and math assessments. They have a high school graduation rate of 87%, while white students have a graduation rate of 93%. Only 40% of African Americans attend college, while 60% of their peers do. They often have not had the challenging high school curriculum that their non-black classmates have. This article had a number of statistics that were relevant. I'm going to pick the 3 most relevant for this presentation. 1 African American student is suspended every 7 seconds of the school day. 104 of every 1,000 African American students will drop out of high school. And 53 years ago, the Brown versus Board of Education declared black students must have equal education opportunities. Time spent on academics is a very strong predictor of academic success. Suspensions cause students to miss instruction, fall behind, have lower self-esteem, and ultimately drop out. When African American students are pulled from the classroom at higher rates than their peers, they are not receiving an equal education. High expectations and teacher attitudes are key factors of student success. Having an adult who believes in a student can have a huge impact. Building positive relationships between teachers and students can greatly reduce the culture gap. Greeting students at the door, attending their activities, asking about their family members, and offering to stay late and help are all some ways to build relationships with students. Students recognize and respond to teachers that care and reach out. Many schools that have reduced discipline referrals and increased academic success have implemented rewards for students that do what they are supposed to do. Others have established support groups for parents and students of color. This has helped improve the racial climate of the school. Another program that has been implemented is called BASE, which stands for Brothers for Academic and Social Enrichment. It has given these students a place to fit in and also to feel vested in the school. According to the article, High Suspension Schools and Dropout Rates for Black and White Students, it is more likely that black students will be suspended than white students. School suspensions contribute to poor academics and increase the chance a student will drop out of school. High suspension rates can also negatively impact the school environment. The focus of the study was to take a closer look at the connection between school-wide suspensions and dropout rates. It specifically looked at whether schools with low suspension rates have lower dropout rates, particularly among black students. An analysis was done using data from the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth. It was based on a sample of 6,192 students aged 12 to 16, of which 5,244 of these students graduated from high school and 948 dropped out. 180 possible factors were considered and narrowed down to 16 significant indicators for a student dropping out. The most influential factor was whether a student had a history of suspension. This factor increased the chance of the student dropping out early by 78%. This study also looked at the characteristics of the schools that could be related to the dropout rate. The schools with high dropout rates had much higher rates of suspension, more low socioeconomic students, and greater retention rates. The schools with the highest suspension rates also had higher percentages of minority students and students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. In many cases, the districts with the greatest number of minority students received less funding per student than the schools with fewer minority students. Other factors that contribute to dropout rates include students in urban schools, aggressive attitudes, and commitment to school rules. The study was based on 296 high schools in Virginia. Both the Virginia Department of Education and the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services cooperated with this study. The average enrollment in these schools was 1,207 students, but there was a range from 33 to 2,881 students. The study was based on data collected for the 2006-2007 school year. There were 49,511 counts of suspension. Of these, 94% were short-term, 1 to 10 days, 5% were long-term, 11 to 364 days, and 1% were expulsions of 365 or more days. The average dropout rate for Black students was directly related to higher suspension rates, higher percentages of free and reduced meals, and lower financial resources per pupil. To determine how the dropout rate was related to suspensions, a three-step regression analysis was conducted. In step 1, the percentage of minority students was the variable that most strongly predicted the dropout rate. In step 2, student attitudes toward aggression and school rules were strongly related to the dropout rate. In step 3, which accounted for the previous variables, there was a very strong correlation between overall suspensions at the school and the dropout rate. In conclusion, schools with high suspension rates were consistently associated with high dropout rates. Suspensions increased the dropout rate for both white and Black students. Suspended students miss instructional time, which makes it harder to keep up. It has also been shown that schools with low suspension rates use more prevention strategies to reduce discipline problems. And that led me to my third article, Strategies for Preventing Disproportionate Exclusions of African American Students. The authors looked at disproportionate suspensions and expulsions and the implementation of positive behavior supports. They emphasize that there is consistent evidence that minority students, especially African American students, have disproportionately high rates of suspension and expulsion. They are more likely to be punished more severely for minor behavior violations and have a disproportionately high number of long-term exclusions from school. They are more likely to be referred to the office for minor infractions such as defiance or disruption than their peers. School policies and individual teacher tolerance levels can greatly affect disciplinary actions. The goal of this study was to identify specific strategies that could be used to decrease the disproportionate exclusion of African American students. School-wide positive behavior supports is a collection of prevention strategies that focus on building positive relationships in order to achieve social and academic success for all students. The key elements include actively teaching expected behaviors, consistently reinforcing expected behaviors, consistent consequences for inappropriate behavior, monitoring student behavior in all school settings, and the use of data for decision-making concerning students' support needs. This study used 46 schools to measure the disproportionality of exclusions of African American students and to determine which strategies would most reduce suspensions. These were the two most significant strategies. Expected student behaviors are acknowledged regularly. There were 4 or more positives to every 1 negative. Transitions between instructional and non-instructional activities are efficient and orderly. In addition to the strategies above, this article also recommended implementing the following strategies. Patterns of student problem behaviors should be reported to teams and faculty for active decision-making on a regular basis. The school team should have access to ongoing training and support from district personnel. Local resources should be used to conduct functional behavior support planning, especially for the students that nothing else is working for. The schools where teachers increased positive reinforcement were also the schools that reduced their disproportionate exclusion of African American students. Building positive relationships between teachers and students has been identified as particularly important for African American students. I had originally selected 3 articles that all discussed the disproportionate rate of African American students being suspended. And then I adjusted that and included an article showing the correlation between suspension rates and dropout rates, and also an article that talked about strategies for reducing suspensions and dropout rates. I did this because I think as administrators and as educators, I think it can be easy to look at suspensions and expulsions as a quick fix for behavior problems. And I think after looking at the statistics, it's impossible to ignore the fact that students that are suspended are at such a great risk of dropping out. And that goes against everything that we are working for. We are trying to help students achieve academic success. We're trying to help them ultimately graduate. And so we have to look at this and the big picture of this. And I truly think there are things we can do to improve the statistics and greatly increase students' chances of graduating. In the first article, a quote I especially liked was by Jarvis Sanford, a principal in a Chicago school where 98% of the students are African American. He said, "It is incumbent on us to tell them we care and we are rooting for them. Education is the great equalizer. We have to put examples in front of students and let them know we will not give up on them." To me, this said we need to be the ones to model the way. We need to lead by example. We need to take an honest look at our own beliefs. I don't think we are ever intentionally trying to treat students unfairly or be discriminatory, but I think it happens, and so we need to be honest about that and really examine our thought process. I also think we need to be aware of our own personality type and how it affects others. We studied characteristics and traits of our personality pretty heavily. They're not something that's easily changed, and so being aware of them is essential. I also think we should share our values and our goals with our staff and with students, but especially staff. We want to get them on board with a vision for the entire school. We need to demonstrate tolerance and respect for diversity. I think that if we do this on a daily basis, I think that staff pick up on this, I think students pick up on it, and it helps to create an environment that we're wanting, that's conducive to learning, that students get along and respect each other. I also think as much as possible we need to include diversity in faculty members. This helps provide positive role models that students relate to. And I also think we can offer resources to staff members, such as books, materials, things that we've read that are a great resource. Another quote I liked from the second article was, "This study lends support to the idea that high school administrators and teachers can make changes in their policies and practices that improve their school's climate and increase the chances that all students earn their high school diploma." This one to me was about challenging the process. We can focus on prevention and intervention rather than suspension. We can monitor the effects of the disciplinary policy. I'm thinking zero tolerance policies specifically are rigid. They don't allow much flexibility in looking at things on a case-by-case situation, so maybe they need to be re-examined. I also think we need to analyze data and use it for decision making. We need to ensure that students that are at risk or minority students have access to highly qualified teachers and that they're not getting the most inexperienced teachers in the building. I also think we need to educate staff. Ruby Payne is a great resource for this, but educate them on students from different backgrounds and help them relate a little bit better. I think that it's essential to set high expectations for all students, regardless of race, gender, socioeconomic background. I also think we need to implement positive behavior strategies. The high school I work at, we do something called positive referrals. It's like a discipline referral, but we write it for when we catch them doing something good. And I've never written one and called home on one that it doesn't just make their day. I also think collaboration between faculty and administration regarding behavior on specific students can also be very beneficial. And the third article, or the third quote that I especially liked, said, "We see ourselves reflected in the people around us." This was by Robert Barr, an expert in at-risk students. "If people look at us as a loser, we'll come to believe we are a loser. If a kid has one adult who believes in him, that person can have a transforming quality. If you surround a group of kids with people who believe in them, just imagine what can happen." I think this is the heart of the issue and the place we can have the biggest impact. To me, this is about encouraging the heart. This is being highly visible so students can relate. You get to know them by name. You can greet them daily. I know our principal does at the front door. I've stood there and watched him. We're in a school of over 1,400 students. He calls kid after kid by name and greets them. Classroom involvement. Our principal is a great role model in this one. He pops into classrooms, sometimes shares a joke, sometimes just observes for a minute or two, but almost on a daily basis he pops in. The other thing he does that I think is a great idea, he actually teaches a math class. He takes a group of students that are probably some of the most at-risk students in the building, and he teaches one class a day, every year. So just some great ideas that I've gotten from him. And the final key here to me is that relationships matter. I think that building relationships with our students, with our staff, but students that connect to an administrator, a teacher, to an adult in the building have a much greater chance of staying in school, of not being suspended, of being successful. As leaders, we need to find a way to help keep students in school. There are many variables involved in student success, and some are beyond our control, but I truly believe we have the ability to be one of the biggest variables in helping all students achieve success. Thank you.